Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. We usually start, before we introduce the speaker, by going around and introducing ourselves. We had a couple of new people arrive while we were sitting. Is there anybody now who is here for the first time? Yes, hi. What's your name? Mike. So we'll have a host and other people who can talk to after the speaker speaks in the social hour. Please make Mike welcome. So we'll just go around the room and introduce ourselves. My name is Peter, and I was sick this week, so I was just thinking about what it means for the days to get short and my health to get short also. And I think going through the winter teaches me something about faith.
About what?
Faith.
Douglas.
I'm Bill.
Bob. I'm Tom.
Gary. Justin.
Adrian.
George.
Jerry.
Ray.
Mike.
Kay.
Jay.
Carl.
David.
Lee.
Leor. Kurt.
Harley.
Ron.
Rich.
Michael.
Mike.
Jim. Mark.
Paul.
Jim.
Dave.
Steve. Juan.
Robert.
Paul.
Kevin.
Jerry.
Marty.
Scott.
Peter. David.
Jack.
Jim.
Larry.
Bill.
Clark.
Rich. Larry. Robert.
Howard Court.
Is that everybody? Guys are in the corner.
Hi, I'm Michael. Can I steal that chair behind you?
Yes, you can. I was going to use it all. Please, take it.
That's Robert.
Okay. So our speaker today is Pam Weiss. Pam is returning to GBF after a very well-received talk earlier this year on right speech. She's a Buddhist meditation teacher, an executive coach, and a trainer of coaches. Pam has practiced Zen for almost 20 years, including several years of monastic training, and is now training with Jack Kornfield through the Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Marin. She leads a weekly meditation group in San Francisco on Wednesday nights at the Unitarian Universalist Church. She teaches classes inside organizations and offers retreats internationally. She is married to Eugene Cash, another Buddhist. And for information on Pam, you can see her website. We have the address of the website in the newsletter. And I think you also bought some flyers outside.
There are flyers for the San Francisco Insight. The information about the Wednesday night group are on the table.
So I'll turn the floor over now to our speaker. Please welcome.
Thank you. We have a very full house. The holiday season. Nice to be here again. For the last several weeks in the Wednesday night group that I lead, we've been talking about dana, D-A-N-A, which is the Pali word for giving or generosity. And it was meant to just be one talk, but it's continued in a very lively dialogue within the group. And it seems like an appropriate thing to speak about in this, what's called the season of giving. So here we are in the season of giving, and mostly that ends up looking like, can I get up at 4 a.m. to get in line at Target on is it Black Friday? Is that what it's called? Black Friday, which blurred into Gray Thursday. So the season of giving has perhaps lost some of its real feeling behind it, or intent behind it. So it seems useful perhaps to remind ourselves what this is really about. And all of you are perhaps somewhat familiar with the Buddhist concept, at least, of dana, as the teachings were translated from Asia to the West. One of the traditions that was brought along was this idea that the teachings themselves are priceless, meaning there can be no real monetary value of the value of insight, of kindness, of waking up to who and what we are. And that has come to the West in this tradition of payment by dana, or offering generosity as the teachings are offered open-handedly, open-heartedly, without any restraint, that then there is a response to that offering, or an opportunity for those who receive the spoken teaching to respond in kind. But actually, so all of you are familiar with a dana basket. It's not unlike, a basket that goes around in a church, for those of you who grew up in a different tradition. But actually, again, the meaning of it is not just about putting some money into a basket. There's actually a whole beautiful teaching behind the spirit of a dana basket, or this particular aspect of dana. But I every time I talk about this, I remember that it was probably 15 years ago, maybe a little bit less, when my husband began teaching in the Buddhist tradition, and he had been a therapist and was now starting to teach, and he would say that he was getting paid by dana. And my mother, at one point, as we were sitting at a restaurant somewhere, and Eugene said something about being paid by dana, and she kind of pulled on my sleeve and she said, "Pam, who is this dana?" And she imagined perhaps that, he had some kind of sugar mama, right, who was paying for his ability to bring these teachings forward. So I think that actually there's quite a bit of confusion about, well, what is this really? What does it mean? What is it about? So in Asia, the primarily Buddhist teachings were in a certain way divided, in that there were monks, nuns, monastics who engaged in the practice itself, who lived in the monastery, who did various long hours of meditation and so on. And then there was the lay people who supported the monks and nuns. And so for lay people, the primary practice, the primary way that they made contact with Buddhist practice was through generosity. That was the main practice. And in addition to paying for, making contributions to the monastery, there was also this tradition of giving food. I have a friend who was in Asia a few years ago and stayed at a monastery for a while, and then wanted to make a contribution by paying for a meal. And it's one of the ways that lay people can support the temple, the monastery. And she was stunned to find that basically all of the meals were already taken for the whole year, for the whole remainder of the year. There was like a waiting list to give. So that's the spirit of how it's understood, that there's great benefit in giving. But for us, it's different. In part, it's different because as Buddhist practices have been translated to the West, there isn't such a sharp division. It's not that meditation practices for the monks and then the rest of us support them, but actually in kind of a wonderful style of the West and perhaps of America, we wanted to practice too. And so here we are with a half an hour of silent sitting and understanding that it's not just a practice for the temple, for the monastery, for the monks, but it's actually a practice that all of us can contribute to. And so then the line of who gives and who receives and all of that becomes a little bit muddled, I think. And I think it's confusing for many people. So I want to explore a little bit with you, and we'll see. As I said, we've been talking about this for the last 3 weeks in this other group, and so I'm hoping that I can kind of pull out the pith of what are the really essential points about this teaching, beautiful teaching of dana, of generosity, and open the conversation and invite dialogue this afternoon or with me among you, and also you among yourselves. I've found for myself in the last weeks, as I've been working with, teaching, studying about this, that it's just brought this quality of delight, really, into my life. And it is one of the ways that dana is understood, is that it's actually, it's not a burden. It's not meant to be giving by obligation. It's that the act of giving is actually joyful. It has joy in it. And probably all of you can think or remember a time when either something was given to you and openly given, openly received, or when you gave from a place of real open-handedness, open-heartedness. It has so much joy in it, actually. It doesn't always feel that way. And so I think that there are two aspects of working with the practice. One is that, like kindness or patience or equanimity, it's a quality. The quality of generosity is something that we can, the Buddha used to say, it's something that which we can incline our mind toward. And really it's inclining the mind and the heart and the body toward this quality of giving, of generosity. So it's actually something that we can cultivate in ourselves. And as is often the case when you take on something to work with in that way, a lot of what comes up is the opposite. So a lot of what you may notice, and this has been true for me also, is that on the one hand I'm feeling all of the delight and joy in giving, and then I'm also feeling my edges. Like give. I feel the no. I feel the place where I don't feel generous. And that's useful too. So it's not that working with a quality like this is all about overriding yourself and pushing yourself to give. It's actually about discovering what it is and inclining the mind, inclining the heart, inclining the body, but also using it as a way to study the self, to study those places in us that don't want to give. That's useful too. And can we be kind? Can we be generous with those places in ourselves? It's a really essential piece. Because otherwise it just becomes a big should. It becomes a big burden. It becomes a big obligation. There's Lewis Hyde, it's an author who wrote a book called The Gift. And he explored the practice of generosity, of giving and receiving, really across multiple cultures. And in a very simple way, he described that there's a difference between what he called really true and false giving. And the essence of it had to do with the intent behind the giving. And he said giving from obligation is not true giving. Giving from a sense of gratitude, that's true giving. And so we have to be willing to be honest with ourselves about, am I giving because I think I should, or is it a real uprising of gratitude that comes up out of us and extends into the world? So maybe it's useful to just say also that in the framing of working with this, that in the Tibetan tradition, there's often an explanation of a quality, of a term, of some aspect of the teaching. Well, they'll talk about the near and far enemies, which is not the greatest language for it, but it'll give you a sense of exploring the territory. So the far enemy, the opposite of generosity, is stinginess. And the near enemy of generosity, which for most of us, if we're honest about our giving, it's often mixed, right? So the near enemy, and what we can begin to watch for as we take this on as a lens to observe ourselves and our life, is it's called giving with a receipt. Right? Giving with an expectation of wanting something back. And I don't know about you, but I often don't realize that I'm expecting something back until I don't get it. So I give someone a something, whether it's a thing or a compliment or my time and energy, and I don't get any energy back. I don't get a thank you. I don't get, maybe they're rude. And then I realize, I was expecting something in return. It's a really wonderful place to notice. Aha, I see, I had an expectation. Doesn't mean the expectation is wrong, but just to see it is very useful in that way. So we can begin to take this on as a lens. I always think of, in Buddhist teaching, there are often these lists of qualities or capacities that one can participate in. And this one, dana or generosity, is the first of the steps, if you will, of what are called the paramis or paramitas, the perfections. And there are a series of qualities that include generosity, patience, ethics, mindfulness, awareness, concentration, wisdom, this whole array of different qualities. But it starts with generosity. And this particular list or path or set of stepping stones is specifically targeted for, really it's non-monastics. It's for people who are living in the world. And so I think it's a very useful place. And interesting that the first step is this opening of the heart, opening of the hands, opening and releasing. And it points very directly to the essence of the Buddha's teaching, which he's reputed to have said, I teach one thing and one thing only, suffering and the end of suffering. And the first two, what are called noble truths or ennobling truths, are the truth of dukkha, of suffering, of dissatisfactoriness, of stress, anxiety, the truth that there's some difficulty in the world. If you pay attention, you'll notice there's some difficulty in the world. That's the first truth. And the second truth is that there's a cause. There's a cause for that difficulty, and that difficulty is caused by what he describes as clinging or holding on. And basically that means we cling or hold on to wanting things to stay the same if we like them, and wanting them to go away if we don't like them. And living from that perspective of trying to hold on to what we like and trying to get away from what we don't like. Well, you've probably noticed it doesn't work very well. It can work for a short period of time, but for the most part, all of us living in human bodies on this planet in this period of time inevitably bump up against being around people we don't want to be around, and losing things, losing people, even losing our own, losing experiences or moods that we don't want to lose. Because the truth is that everything's moving, and when we try to hold on, we get, this is one teacher described, the whole of suffering can be understood, suffering and clinging can be understood as rope burn. So that's what it's like. And so if this is the truth, and this is what the Buddha suggested, and it's also for you to see for yourself, is it true? Is your own grasping, holding on to what you like, is it Does that actually make you happy? Is your own effort to get away from what you don't like, is it ever really successful? For more than a few moments? It's for you to find out. But if that's the case, then it makes sense that the initial or primary antidote to tanha, clinging, to grasping, is giving, is opening, is releasing, is letting things pass through. Because things are moving anyway. That's actually how it is. So we can line up with how things are, or we can fight it. We can put ourselves in there and say, no, I want it my way, I want it to go left, I want it to go right, I want it to go up or down, or whatever it is, and then we will suffer. You all know this in your own experience if you reflect. I'm saying it in a generic way, but this is in some ways why I think Buddhist teaching has a strong resonance in Western culture, and particularly Western culture that's kind of psychologically oriented, because we get it. Actually, that is the way things are. So it's in this spirit that we can understand the potential benefit and usefulness of inclining the mind, inclining the heart, inclining the body toward opening, toward releasing. The Buddha, I always now say, the Buddha is reputed to have said, because the truth is we don't know what the Buddha really said. Nothing was written down for at least 500 years. And then who knows who wrote what, and was it really what he said? But we can look for in the things that the Buddha said, well, what really helps us? What is it that really helps us understand suffering and the end of suffering? Well, here's one of the things he's reputed to have said, which I think is quite useful, which was, if you knew what I know about generosity, about dana, you would give away part of every meal. If you knew what I knew about generosity, you would give away part of every meal. Now, this is not a you should give away part of every meal. This is coming from wisdom. This is coming from giving is joyful. So if you really understood that, you would want to give away part of every meal. It's funny, I'm remembering the first evening that I gave the first talk I did on dana in my group. I got there a little bit early, and one of the other people who was a kind of regular in the group got there early too. And without his knowing what the talk was about, he offered me half of his sandwich. And I felt delighted in it, and it was a beautiful offering. So there it is. And when I trained in the Zen monastery, that practice was built in a kind of ritual way. So we would, the main meal was the middle of the day, the lunchtime meal. And you'd eat in these 3 little bowls, oryoki bowls. And the first bowl was almost always rice. And then there was, soup or vegetables or something else. And there was this beautiful ritual we did where you take 3 grains of rice and place it on the end of one of your, it's a utensil that we'd use. And then the serving crew would come around, because you'd eat in the meditation hall at your seat with these little bowls that you open up. It's like a tea ceremony. It's a very beautiful ritual, and then you close them back up. And so you take 3 grains of rice and place it, and then someone would come along with a little tray with these little scrapers, and they'd scrape the 3 grains of rice off. And this was a spirit offering. So built into the daily practice was this giving away a part of every meal. It's a beautiful practice, and also in another way that's built into the practice is in the end of the morning here that we spend together, we do a dedication of merit, right? That's the spirit of generosity. It's that I'm not going to just hold on to this for myself. I'm going to open and offer it out into the world. So even if you consider the sense of this, the benefit of this beyond the traditional ways that it shows up in Buddhist teaching, I was thinking about, I go frequently to an acupuncturist. And in acupuncture, the body is understood to be an energy flow. And illness or pain in the body is when the energy stops flowing. Right? And then they put the needles in and help get things moving again. This is in the same idea, that when we grab, when we hold on, when things get stuck, there's ill health. And when things move, there's aliveness. Things are moving as they should, as life does. Same is true if you think about water. When water's flowing, it's clean and fresh and alive. And when it gets stuck, and it kind of sits in a pool, and then it gets algae growing in it, and then mosquitoes come, and then it gets kind of yuck, right? Same idea. So this is beyond the way that you may have known dana as the spirit, as the dedication or the dana basket. There is this spirit of generosity, which is really what's meant to be cultivated, and which for me, I have a wish that we could reinvigorate this season, this spirit of giving with dana, with real generosity. So let me say a little bit about giving what. Because there is, as often there is in Buddhism, there is a nice list of different levels of giving that are possible. So I will say a little bit about that, and then we can open a bit to speak together about it. So the most obvious level of giving is giving stuff, giving things, giving, putting money in the dana basket, giving money to someone sitting on the street, giving away old clothes, giving. So this is kind of the most obvious level of giving, extremely useful to give in this way, and there's more that can be done. I remember some years ago, it's probably 5 or 6, maybe more, 7 or 8 years ago, I first started teaching, and I worked with it was a women's circle. And we were working with this, and the group of women decided that they wanted, as a group, to practice giving. And so one of the women in the group was on the board of a women's shelter. And so the group came together and said, we're going to give, food and diapers and so on. They got a wish list from this woman who was on the board. And they came to one of the meetings, and they all brought stuff, and she brought the stuff to the shelter. It was a beautiful offering. And then they came back after doing that and felt the joy of giving. And they felt like, well, that was good, but I think there's more that we could give. And so then they decided that instead of it's instead of giving things, that they actually wanted to offer their time and services. And this was an amazing thing that came up out of the group. It was all a group of professional women, and they decided that they would offer training to the board and staff of the shelter. And so they came together and they designed a whole workshop, and they went through all of the strain that comes from having to work with other people and put something like that together. And then they offered this to the group. And at this time, there are still several women who are now on the board of the shelter. So that was a whole nother level of giving. And it's like Mother Teresa had a rule in a certain way, or an attitude about, yes, you can give money, but really, why don't you come and give your time, give your energy. And this is the second level of giving, which it's often referred to as giving the Dharma. And sometimes that can be narrowly translated as giving Buddhist teachings. But for me, I think it seems a little self-serving. That yes, you can give stuff, but if you really want to give something, then you give Buddhist teachings. Well, yeah, actually what it means, I think, is real giving is giving the truth. That's what the Dharma means. It's giving the truth, and it's also giving your willingness to be with. It's giving your willingness to offer your time, your attention, your kindness. This is a tremendous gift that we can give. So it's the difference between putting money in someone's hat or box or bowl who's sitting on the street asking for money and actually looking at them, saying hello, asking how they are. This has been the practice that I've taken on myself in the last few weeks, and it's remarkable how I think that, I'm being generous by making contact with people, and it's completely changed my world. Because the world becomes a different place when I'm engaging with people in this way. It's a beautiful practice, which I encourage you to take on as you see fit. It's been quite moving in many ways. So there's giving things, and then there's giving our time, our attention, our energy. I want to... I'll pause now. I was going to read a poem about it, but I think that's enough. The third level of giving is one that is interesting, and I'm not quite sure that I understand fully myself yet, which is called giving fearlessness. Giving fearlessness. And the degree to which I understand what this means is that it's giving beyond the edge of what one thinks one could give. And that doesn't necessarily mean like giving more money than you would want to give. That's still at level, the level of giving material things. But what would it mean to give in a way that would challenge my sense of self, my sense of this is who I am, or my wish to protect myself in some way? What does it mean to step past that? And my sense of it is that it's actually quite difficult to do, and that many people who do give fearlessly are a little reluctant. In other words, that we need help to do that. So we've been talking in my group about examples of people who have given or continue to give fearlessly. And one of the obvious examples is Martin Luther King. Gave fearlessly. And it's interesting that the stories that I have read about him in his life are that he didn't want to do it. He had to be convinced. He had to be pushed in a way. And so that giving fearlessly has implicit in it an understanding that when we give fearlessly, it's not just us. That there has to be a sense of this interconnectedness. Martin Luther King didn't do what he did by himself. And I doubt that he would have done it or even been able to do it if it had just been one person. There was a whole movement. There were hundreds of people who supported his doing that. And it's interesting that in the Buddhist literature, a similar thing happened. The Buddha, apparently after he woke up, didn't want to talk. He didn't think anyone would understand. And so he thought, well, I'll just hang out with my own nice enlightenment here and have a good time. And the story is that there was divine intervention, that one of the gods who was able to see into the mind of the Buddha thought, oh, this is bad news. We actually want this newly awakened being to go out and share the good news. And he's considering not doing that. So he came down, and there's a beautiful interaction where, the Buddha, the newly awakened Buddha says, well, I don't really think anyone will understand, and so on and so forth. And this Deva, this god, says to him, that's not so. There are beings with little dust in their eyes. There are beings with little dust in their eyes, meaning they're a little confused, but they're not completely confused, and you could help them. And that is part of what inspires him to go forward. So even the Buddha didn't do it by himself. He was encouraged, helped to step forward in that way. And I think I've been continuing to consider and look around for examples of that kind of fearlessness because it's so inspiring to us. It gives us a sense of what's really possible for us as human beings. And of course there are many examples. Gandhi is an example. Nelson Mandela is probably one of the prime examples of a person of our time who, anyway, stepped past hatred and stepped into tremendous giving. I want to read a short piece. I found this in an interview in the Sun magazine. It's a story of Reuben Hurricane Carter. Some of you may know the story from the Denzel Washington movie about Hurricane, called Hurricane. And he was a very intelligent and successful black man who was unapologetic about. He was a prize fighter and also a club owner, and he was very proud and smart and successful. And in a way, it seemed to me that really what he was arrested for was not being willing to be apologetic about any of that. And he was put in jail, and then over many, many years, almost 20 years, he fought the sentencing and eventually was let go. And when he was let go, the judge said that the sentencing was primarily based on racism, not on guilt. It was quite a turn. But it took, like Mandela, who spent the better part of his years in prison, the same was true for Reuben Hurricane Carter. And there's a big debate. I Googled it, and there's a big debate on the internet about whether he was guilty or not guilty. Maybe we'll never know. But here's a piece from the real guy, not from Denzel, about his understanding. And it speaks to this beautiful piece of wisdom about our interconnectedness. Here's what he says. When you spend a great deal of time in darkness, in solitary, where everything blends into one, if you're fortunate, you'll begin to see things more vividly than you've ever seen them before. It may take days, weeks, months, years, but you'll begin to see things as they really are. You'll begin to see yourself as you've never seen yourself before, because when you can't see outside, you can only look inside. In a very real sense, going to prison was the best thing that ever happened to me. Without it, I would never have been able to find myself. I would have been a bald-headed, mean-looking ex-prize fighter talking through a screen of conditioning, anger, and bitterness. And then the interviewer says to him, so, paradoxically, prison made you free. And this is where he shows how sharp he is. He says, no, not free, but awake. No, not free, but awake. Freedom doesn't really exist because it implies separation, and everything in this universe is connected. There is no separation. This is Nicaragua. This is Israel. I see and feel everything on this earth. When someone is facing execution, I know it. I feel what that person is going through. When bombs drop, I feel the pain and suffering of the people. It seems to me that for our wisdom to mature to a place of fearlessness, or really for any real giving to come through us, it requires some wisdom. It requires some wisdom, meaning the ability to see how things really are. And that includes seeing that everything is moving, that we can't freeze our experience and hold on. If we do, we'll suffer. This is seeing the truth of impermanence, seeing the truth that everything's going all the time, including us, right? It also means seeing the truth of our non-separateness, seeing the truth that, as I said, none of us can do anything by ourselves, that we are, in fact, when we see things clearly, inextricably connected to one another. That's actually how it is. And it also means seeing the truth that everything is given. You didn't make any of this. It's all given to you. Now, the trouble is some of what's given you like a lot, and some of what's given you don't like at all. And a lot of what's given just flows right by. We miss it. It's kind of neutral experience. And so we don't pay attention. So we miss a tremendous amount of our life. But I think the real source and understanding of where what Lewis Hyde described as true giving comes from is the giving that comes from generosity. And in order to be genuinely generous, we have to be sitting squarely in the understanding that everything is given to us all the time. Every moment. You didn't make this moment. You didn't. And that's where we get into trouble, is we think, me, I did this, I did that. And it's good that we can do stuff. This was not on my radar for what I was going to say, but I'm going to say because it just popped in. There's a famous story about Suzuki Roshi, who was the founder of San Francisco Zen Center. And the story goes that one day he was, in his room, and he went out and he called in several of his senior students, and he walked them into the bathroom, and he had them look in the toilet bowl, and there was a poop in the bowl, and he looked at them and he said, "I did that." This is a teaching. So we walk around saying, I did. And actually, that's not how it is at all. So when we understand this givenness, the givenness of the world that we were born into, then it makes sense to open our hands, to open our hearts. And I'll say that we have to start where we are. The Buddha taught, one of the things the Buddha was great at was meeting people at the level where they were. And he taught many, many different kinds of people. It's often emphasized, the Buddhist Sanghas, the monks and nuns, but the Buddha taught kings and warriors and prostitutes and housewives and children and merchants. He taught. Everybody was an equal opportunity receiver of the truth. And so one of the teachings that he gave about dana, about generosity, it's described as that he taught one of his disciples who was having trouble with generosity. The practice he gave him was just to take a stone and practice passing it from one hand to the other. Just to practice. So we start where we are. I'm sort of giving the high bar of what's possible with generosity, but also, let's be realistic. It's all on the same trajectory. It's all a matter of sitting in the midst of this flow of life and opening to it, and then letting it pour through. I'll close with one more piece, and then I'll invite some questions. I think there we go. Nope. This is from Henry Miller. He says, giving and receiving are at bottom one thing, depending upon whether one lives open or closed. Living openly, one becomes a medium, a transmitter. Living thus as a river, one experiences life to the full, flows along with the current of life, and dies in order to live again as an ocean. When we give, when we understand the fluidity of life, the connectedness we have with life, the generosity of life itself, we expand. We're able to move out of our small sense of I, me, mine, and, as he says so beautifully, become an ocean. So this is, I hope, some inspiration for all of us as we continue with the madness of the holiday season. And perhaps an invitation to remember the real meaning of the holidays, which are holy days. And that this spirit of generosity, of giving, of opening our hands and hearts is the essence of holiness. It's the doorway or access that we have to be that ourselves. So please, if you have a question or comment or something you'd like to share. Yeah.
First of all, thank you. You spoke earlier of the tradition of dana and the monasteries in Asia, and I was teaching that to my classes. We study ancient India and ancient China. And I got a phone call from a Chinese parent that surprised me. She said, "You Americans are very naive about Buddhist history in China." She said there are periods in Chinese history where the monasteries are very oppressive and charged exorbitant fees for funerals. That was startling to me.
Yeah.
But it helped me in the long run realize whenever we romanticize,
Yes.
which we tend to do in the West, it doesn't serve us.
Yeah.
That institutions are institutions, and that was new information
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me.
Yeah,
It's
they mess
startling.
things up as well as anybody.
And they need to reform.
Yeah. And it is also true that there is a tradition of, monks going out with a begging bowl. It's not true in China. It is still true in Burma, in Japan. It is part of the tradition. But I think what you're pointing to, which is that the tradition can be distorted, is in a similar way that this tradition of giving gifts, for the holy days can be distorted. That happens everywhere. So it's a really important point. That's why we want to bring the clarification of generosity requires some wisdom. It requires seeing things as they are. Otherwise, it just becomes, can become kind of saccharine or something. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Appreciate your talk also, and it really helped solidify for me the idea that the act of giving and generosity really encapsulates so much of what Buddhism, the good points of Buddhism are for me around kindness, patience, both with myself and with other people as well, connection, and so on. So it's this one act or mindset that really kind of is the bottom line of why I come here.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that clarity that you brought.
There's a beautiful line from Ajahn Sumedho, one of the founders, one of the Western voices of the Thai Buddhist, Thai forest tradition, and he says, "Love is wisdom's natural radiance." So when we see clearly, the natural expression of that is what you're pointing to. And it's beautiful. Yeah, thanks. Please.
A couple of weeks ago, someone was here, I forget his name, he talked about happiness, and he's the person writing a book and all of this. And what makes people, why are happy people happy, this sort of thing. I think about this notion of giving generosity. And so, for example, I'm on a board of directors now for a nonprofit, and I am doing it out of a place of generosity, of gratitude, for sure. And I would never describe it as joyful. It's not a happy experience. I'm in the right place. I want to be doing this as again, coming from a place of really coming from a place of gratitude. And so just kind of reconciling sort of joyfulness or with sort of being happy.
Well, I think it's a really good point, because I think often we shortchange happiness. We think happiness means I feel good. I feel good, that's nice. But if you noticed, it's not going to last. Right? And what you're pointing to is something much deeper, which is a real kind of happiness that can a deeper kind of happiness that can come from being aligned with what we care about. Which means sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. Doesn't mean we're going to have pleasant moment after pleasant moment. It's actually a very superficial kind of happiness. It's nice when it happens. Enjoy, please, enjoy. And it's not reliable. We can't just have pleasant moment after pleasant moment. And so what you're beautifully addressing or pointing to here is that actually there's something deeper. There's a deep satisfaction that can come from being true to what we care about, being true to what's meaningful. And sometimes it's hard work. Probably hard work being on that board. Yeah. And doesn't mean every conversation or every meeting is going to be fun. But there's something more there. Yeah. Lovely. Please.
Yeah, my question is, how do you not throw out the baby with the bathwater? And the situation is here, every religion that I'm familiar with has dana built in, karma yoga, giving 10%, go on and on, all the cultures have it. And every one of those same cultures have warlike qualities or have had history of it, and slaughter and rape, even eating each other. How do you not throw out the baby with the bathwater? I mean, for me, it's meditation. That keeps me stable. But then quickly after the meditation, I go right back into the shadow side sometimes. I wonder if you have any thoughts on how you can hold on to the dana, the karmic yoga, and not deny that the shadow side existed or happens, but not dwell on it.
It seems similar a bit to your question about recognizing the distortions that can come. And in a way, initially I thought, well, you're answering your own question, which was, well, what do you do? There's the shadow side, and then there's the parts that work. Well, how do you reconcile them? Well, you work with the parts that work, and you let go of the rest. I mean, in a way, it's simple. The question about there being a shadow side in the first place, that's a little more complicated. And it is, and I spoke earlier about the four noble or ennobling truths. The Buddha taught there's suffering and there's an end of suffering. He didn't say there wasn't a shadow side. That was actually the first thing he said. Yeah, there's suffering, there's confusion, there's darkness, there's shadowiness, there's all kinds of nasty stuff. And we know that. We're living in the middle of it. So we don't deny that. What the Buddha described in these four noble truths was that the truth of suffering, of dukkha, is to be understood. It's not to be acted on. It's to be understood. And when we understand clearly how it is that distress, that suffering, that meanness, that whatever it is happens in ourselves, when we really understand that clearly, there is a letting go. When we don't understand it clearly, when we don't want to look, when we keep it in the shadows, to use your language, then it's got us. And it's part of the beauty of meditation practice, is that it gives us an opportunity to sit and be present with what's here, without grabbing on, without rejecting. But it allows it to metabolize and move through. Yeah, it's a good question and not a simple one. So.
Without grabbing on it, without rejecting it.
Exactly. That's the practice, and it's not an easy practice. That's why we practice. right? We don't just do it once and now I've got it. No, we practice. And we practice sitting on the cushion, and then we do our best to practice in more complicated circumstances, right? With people and sitting on a board and teaching classes and all the various things we do, where it's kind of wild, isn't it? Whoa. Yeah.
I think we have to stop now.
Yeah.
But will you be available afterwards to talk with people during this?
I'm happy to answer some more questions after for a little bit, yeah.
Okay. That's like
Thank you.
Are there any Sangha-related announcements? Jim?
Next week, we're going to have a discussion. We all enjoy these discussions. It's a way of getting to know each other in a different context. The facilitator will determine the topic. Also, at the steering committee meeting last week, we decided we wanted to put out once again a general invitation and following up Pam's luminous talk on Dana. Thank you very much. In terms of Dana as service to this community, every year about 50 men do something to keep this place running. It's totally run by volunteers. If you are grateful to have this in your life, if you would like to find a way to give Dana a service, we might invent something specifically for you, or you might relieve someone who's been doing the same job for years, which also, there are many different levels of giving in terms of service in this organization, and gratitude is, the fame and payback and gratitude is possibly not our strong suit, but the inner rewards are real, and it's generally more fun than not. And so just think about it. If you find any little willingness within you that you would like to do something to support this organization, there are people all over the world who participate in the GBF. If you Google gay and Buddhist, you get us. And the website is visited. God bless George. Our talks are out there for the whole world to hear. Your questions that you ask the speaker are heard by people everywhere. So we are part of a great net. But anyway, there's a little informal sign-up sheet up there if you would like to be approached, or if you want to talk to Ray or myself about finding somebody that you can contribute on the service level. That would be terrific.
Where is that?
It's just out by the Down Bowl.
Speaking also of CERT, go ahead, Carl.
I just wanted to announce again over the Martin Luther King weekend, January 18th, 19th, and 20th, there's going to be an LGBT residential 3-night retreat up at Saratoga Springs, which is a beautiful retreat center about 2.5 hours north of here. And it's a chance to be in community with, a more vast community than just gay men, because it's going to be gay men and lesbians, bisexual, transgender, and it's going to be co-taught by a lesbian and a gay man who are also both teachers in training with Jack Cornfield. It's Larry Yang and Anushka Fernandopoul, really wonderful people, and it's reasonably priced. There's some flyers out there, and there'll be carpooling, and it'll probably be a traditional Vipassana retreat with sitting and walking and eating meditations and questions and answers. And so Martin Luther King weekend. Saratoga Springs website has information on it too, so you can just Google that. And it's sort of being put together by the Monday night sitting group at the Gay Center, which is 5:30 to 6:30. Also an all volunteer, group too. Nice mixed group, LGBT.
And I didn't know whether you have any inside information, Carl, but I noticed in the Spirit Rock schedule next year they don't include gay and lesbian retreat. So
I think it's there now. Paul, yeah. So
I got the written thing that needs to do.
It's later.
It's like in October or something.
Later in the year.
Oh, it's later.
Yes.
Okay. I only got it up till September.
And an interesting development is that Arena Weissman is going to be back too. So it's going to be Arena and Larry Yang leading that, and that's a 5-night silent retreat. It's at the Spirit Rock facility, which is an incredible experience. Also LGBT, and I think it's October of 2008.
Is there a host today?
I'm the host. There's tea and scones, and please wash your cup if you have tea, and I'll be taking around a Dana bowl, and so I think $5 to $8 is what we suggest. Can't think of anything. Sign up sheet if you want, newsletters, etc.
Any other announcements? Okay, I'll just reaffirm what our host was saying. There's a number of sheets out there, so it gets complicated. There's a pink sheet, beautiful pink, for people who want to be on the mailing list, and you can ask to be on the electronic mailing list or the snail mail list, or both. If you would like to receive our newsletter, you can sign up on the pink sign-up sheet. And we do usually have a group of people who go to lunch afterwards, but it's not formal, so if you are interested in going to lunch with people, hang out till 12:30 or 12:40 when the social hour ends, and lurk near the door. That's usually the best place to catch people who are going to lunch. Is that everything? Did we cover everything?
Happy birthday, Peter.
Oh, thank you. Thursday was my birthday. Any other announcements? All right, well then let's stand and join hands and have the dedication.
So this is our text. Yeah, same one. So I just invite you to actually take a look around. And offering up the goodness of our coming together to share our time, attention, our care, and the Dharma together. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all know the sacred happiness that is sorrowless, and live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, knowing the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.